What if one small change in the way you think could completely transform the way you speak, learn, and live? Have you ever stayed silent because you were afraid of making mistakes in English or worried about what other people might think? You're not alone. And today, we're changing that. In this episode of Learn English Lab, you'll discover why real confidence isn't something you're born with. It's a skill you can build step by step. Through an inspiring story, fascinating psychology, practical strategies, and advanced English listening practice, you'll learn how to replace self-doubt with quiet confidence. So grab your headphones, relax, and let's begin your journey toward becoming a more confident English speaker and a more confident you.
Yeah, I love that intro because that's really the entire foundation we are building on today. Our main mission for this deep dive is just to completely dismantle that huge myth of the fearless speaker. We are going to explore the hidden psychology of confidence and examine how the human body physically reacts to the stress of speaking. And then we'll outline specific strategies that advanced learners can use to bridge that honestly agonizing gap between their native abilities and their second language.
I am so thrilled we're tackling this today because, the materials we're looking at completely flip the script on what most of us have been taught about confidence.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about the cultural definition we're fed every single day, right? You watch movies, you look at social media, and we're basically told that confident people are these, impenetrable superheroes.
Yeah, people think they just walk into a room, their heart rate is perfectly steady, they never hesitate.
Right, they never feel a shred of self-doubt. They just always know the wittiest thing to say. And if you, the person listening to this right now, if you don't feel that way, you automatically assume, well, I must be fundamentally broken.
And that is just incredibly damaging. If you believe genuine confidence means a total absence of fear, you've essentially set an impossible standard for yourself.
You're doomed from the start.
Spot on. You've set yourself up for immediate failure before you even open your mouth. The reality, and psychologists emphasize this heavily in the literature, is that the most genuinely confident people in the world still get nervous.
Wow, really? Even the pros?
Undoubtedly. They still feel uncertain. They still lay awake at night sometimes, staring at the ceiling, wondering if they said the wrong thing. They're entirely imperfect.
So what's the difference then?
The defining difference is not the absence of fear. It's their relationship with that fear. They experience the anxiety, but they simply do not let it dictate their actions. They don't surrender their voice to it.
Okay, that makes me think we really need to clear up some terminology right out of the gate here. Because people use the term self-confidence and self-esteem like they're just, synonyms. But they're fundamentally different psychological concepts, aren't they?
Oh, unquestionably. Conflating those two is where so many language learners get completely stuck. So let's separate them. Self-confidence is task-specific.
Task-specific, okay.
It's your belief in your ability to perform a particular task under pressure. For instance, you might have high self-confidence when it comes to, say, organizing a massive spreadsheet, but very low self-confidence when you have to speak in English during a client meeting.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But self-esteem, on the other hand, is your foundational self-worth. It's how much you value and accept yourself as a human being, completely independent of your achievements or failures.
I like to think of it using a house analogy. So self-esteem is the concrete foundation of the house, right? It's structural, it's deep in the ground. It just means you know you are a worthy person.
I love that visualization.
Thanks. And then self-confidence is like the furniture in a specific room. So you might have this beautifully furnished cooking room, high confidence there, but your public speaking room is totally empty and just terrifying to walk into.
That is accurately how it works. And the tragedy here is that many people let a lack of furniture in one room crack their entire foundation.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Right. They make a grammar mistake in English, which is just a lapse in task-specific self-confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And they let it damage their core self-esteem. They tell themselves, I am a stupid person.
Which is just so hard.
It is.
Yeah.
Authentic confidence actually harmonizes these two concepts. It's the resilient sense that, you can try a difficult task, you might stumble, but you can learn and adapt. All while maintaining that bedrock belief that your value as a human being is never up for debate.
Let's ground this in a real-world scenario from the research, because I know there is someone listening right now who is going to hear their exact life in this story.
Let's do it.
So I was reading about a woman named Sarah. She's originally from Brazil, currently living in London, and works at this super fast-paced international company. Her English on paper is undeniably advanced. She understands everything. But you put her in a glass-walled conference room with native speakers, and she is a ghost. She just stays completely silent.
Yeah, that's so common.
Her internal monologue is just brutal, honestly. It holds her hostage. She sits there desperately translating her brilliant ideas into English, waiting for this, like, flawless, grammatically impenetrable sentence to form in her head.
Waiting for the perfect moment.
Exactly. I mean, spot on. She's waiting for the perfect, seamless moment to jump into the conversation.
And of course, conversational dynamics are messy. So that perfect, seamless moment, it never arrives. The topic moves on, and her brilliant idea just goes unspoken.
Yeah. And on the outside, her colleagues probably just think she's shy or maybe disengaged. But on the inside, her nervous system is in absolute overdrive. She's dealing with this intense self-doubt, feeling like a total fraud.
Right. The imposter syndrome kicks in.
Big time. She looks at her advanced certifications and tells herself, I'm supposed to be fluent. Why am I still so paralyzed? And because she buys into that superhero myth we talked about earlier, that confident people don't feel nervous, she concludes she just doesn't have the confidence gene. She thinks it's a biological failing.
And what is truly heartbreaking about Sarah's conclusion there is that it is a profound misinterpretation of her own biology.
How so?
Well, let's look at what is actually happening in her body. Her heart is hammering against her ribs, her thoughts are racing 1,000,000 miles a minute, and her mouth has gone completely dry.
Sounds like pure panic.
Right. She has labeled these physical sensations as terror and proof of incompetence. But if we look at the physiology, there is a much healthier, more accurate way to interpret those signals.
Okay, I'm listening.
Her heart is racing because she cares deeply about her career and wants to contribute. Her brain is hyperactive because she is performing the incredibly complex, high-level cognitive task of processing abstract ideas in 2 languages simultaneously.
Which takes a lot of juice.
Exactly. I mean, undoubtedly. And her mouth is dry because the sympathetic nervous system has activated in response to a high-stakes social dynamic. Every single one of those physiological responses is a perfectly normal, healthy reaction to a challenging environment.
Wait, so you're saying that even if she builds real confidence, it wouldn't magically slow her heart rate down to a resting pulse?
Not at all.
No.
Authentic confidence doesn't erase the racing heart. It fundamentally changes how she interprets it.
Okay, that's a huge shift.
It is.
Yeah.
Instead of the narrative being, I'm terrified, I'm failing, I must stay silent, she could shift her internal interpretation to, my heart is beating fast because my body is giving you the activation energy I need to speak up in this important meeting.
I love that. Activation energy.
Yes. I'm allowed to have an accent. I'm allowed to drop an article. I am in this room because my perspective has value. If she adopts that mindset, her voice might still shake a bit, but she would speak anyway. One of the psychologists in the materials we were reviewing described real confidence in a way I absolutely love. It is your body agreeing with your words. There is no war between what you project outwardly and what you acknowledge inwardly.
Wow. Your body agreeing with your words, you aren't playing a character. This actually brings up a concept called domain specificity, which I find deeply comforting, honestly.
Let's get into it.
We touched on it with the house analogy earlier, but it really bears repeating. Confidence is not this magical blanket that just drops over your entire existence. I always say it's more like a volume knob, you know?
Yeah.
It doesn't mute the fear, it just turns up the courage. You can be the most confident parent on the playground, but feel utterly terrified when you have to negotiate a salary in a second language.
Yes, and recognizing that fact is incredibly liberating for people. It removes the pressure of having to be confident everywhere all at once. Real confidence is cultivated in particular domains through a very specific cycle, which is experience, feedback, and reflection. We are not talking about a magical switch you flip in your brain. We are talking about methodically rewriting the internal narrative you hold about your own capabilities. And you do that situation by situation.
Okay, I have to push back here, though. Let me stop you. If confidence is completely domain-specific, doesn't that imply we are basically starting from scratch every single time we try something new?
That's a fair question.
Right, because let's say the listener spends a whole year building up their confidence to speak English in corporate meetings. They finally feel good. Are you saying that if they decide they want to try dating in English, they are back at absolute zero? Because that sounds utterly exhausting for the listener.
That is a highly logical concern. But the reality is much more encouraging. You are never truly starting from scratch once you understand the underlying mechanics.
Okay, phew.
Think of it like learning to drive. The specific vehicle, the domain might change. You might go from driving a small sedan to driving a massive moving truck. The truck is new, the dimensions are different. and you will feel a bit nervous at first.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
But you don't forget how a steering wheel works. You don't forget the rules of the road. You carry the underlying architecture with you. Once you learn how to interpret your body's stress signals, once you learn how to manage your inner critic in a corporate meeting, you bring those exact same psychological tools into the dating scenario. The context changes, but your internal machinery is already built.
Okay, that makes total sense. You own the machinery. So let's take a look under the hood. How do we actually assemble this psychological machinery in the specific realm of language learning?
Right.
Because the research points heavily to a concept called self-efficacy. I've heard this term thrown around in corporate seminars, but usually it just sounds like HR jargon for believing in yourself. Is there actual psychological weight to this?
There's immense psychological weight to it. Self-efficacy is literally the engine of human motivation and confidence.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was coined by psychologist Albert Bandura, and it describes your fundamental, deep-seated belief that you can organize and execute the specific actions required to achieve a desired outcome.
So it's not just blind hope.
Exactly. I mean, accurately put, if you have high self-efficacy regarding your English journey, you fundamentally trust that with sufficient time, effort, and strategy, you will improve. You believe you have agency.
And if it's low?
If your self-efficacy is low, you feel utterly powerless. You feel like a victim of your circumstances, and you will feel stuck, even if your objective vocabulary and grammar skills are actually quite advanced.
So how do we actually fuel that engine? You can't just look in the mirror every morning and shout, I have high self-efficacy.
No, affirmations alone will not rewire your brain. You build it through what psychologists call mastery experiences.
Master experiences.
Yes. The human brain is a massive data collection machine. Every time you attempt a challenging task and you witness yourself succeeding, even in a microscopic, seemingly trivial way, your brain updates its internal algorithm regarding what you are capable of surviving.
This connects directly to the idea of mindsets, right? Like the whole growth mindset versus fixed mindset paradigm we hear about.
It is deeply intertwined. An individual with a fixed mindset views any difficulty, any friction at all, as undeniable evidence of failure.
Right.
Their internal monologue says, if remembering this vocabulary word is this hard, it proves I am just not naturally good at languages, I should quit.
Which is so common.
But someone with a growth mindset views friction completely differently. They understand that difficulty is not proof of failure. Difficulty is the physical sensation of the brain learning. Authentic confidence requires a growth mindset because it's the only way to stop demanding immediate perfection from yourself. It allows you to trust the process of improvement.
Think about how this plays out for someone juggling multiple languages, because there is this fascinating case study in the materials about a guy named Jamal.
Jamal, yes.
So Jamal lives in Toronto. He is incredibly smart, already fluent in French and Arabic, and he is just grinding every single day to reach a C1 advanced level in English.
It's a very ambitious goal.
Very. But when Jamal makes a mistake, say he uses the wrong preposition in an email at work, his inner voice is just toxic. It screams at him, "You are so stupid. How can you claim to be advanced and still mess up something a child would know?"
We've all been there, right? Spiraling over a tiny slip.
Yeah, totally. But this isn't just harmless venting. This kind of negative self-talk actively destroys his self-esteem and completely corrodes his self-efficacy. Neurologically, he is basically building a superhighway connecting speaking English with deep, burning shame.
And that's dangerous.
Right. When the brain associates a task with shame, motivation plummets to protect you from the pain.
Now contrast Jamal's reality with a reframed scenario. Let's imagine Jamal has cultivated a growth mindset and a kinder inner voice. He sends that exact same email with the same incorrect preposition.
Okay.
But instead of an inner critic attacking his core worth, an inner coach steps in. This voice says, okay, that was a slightly awkward phrasing. It happens. You are navigating the nuances of 3 distinct language systems in your head every day. You'll double-check the prepositions next time.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a second. That reframing doesn't magically erase the discomfort, right? It still stings to realize you made a mistake at work.
That is a highly accurate observation. The sting absolutely remains. The discomfort of the mistake is still there. But the crucial difference is that the compassionate inner voice prevents the mistake from becoming a crisis of identity.
Ah, I see.
It protects his foundational self-esteem. Over time, as this supportive voice becomes his default neurological pathway, his emotional reaction to making inevitable mistakes becomes significantly less volatile. He is building true resilience.
It's important to acknowledge, though, that this inner voice doesn't just magically appear out of nowhere. We exist within what the research calls a confidence ecosystem.
Yes, the environment matters.
Right. If you grew up in a household or a school environment where you were constantly criticized, mocked for your accent, or humiliated for getting an answer wrong, your brain's default setting might be to believe you are never enough. It's like trying to plant a garden in toxic soil.
That's a great way to put it.
But if you grew up in an environment where effort was praised over perfection, your soil is much richer. Which really makes me wonder, is low self-efficacy basically just learned helplessness? And if someone like Jamal has deeply ingrained automatic shame from a past toxic environment, how on earth does he short-circuit that negative loop when the shame feels so automatic?
It shares a tremendous amount of DNA with learned helplessness, absolutely. When you are repeatedly exposed to environments that tell you your efforts are futile, your brain eventually decides to conserve energy and simply stop trying.
It just gives up.
Exactly. However, the saving grace of the human mind is neuroplasticity. The brain's architecture is not fixed. It is highly malleable.
Thank goodness.
Right. Think of your current negative thought patterns, like a deeply carved hiking trail through a forest. It's easy to walk down because you've walked it a million times. Choosing a new, confident thought is like hacking your way through dense brush. It's really hard.
You need a machete.
Yes. But the good news for the listener is this. Even if your past environment was toxic, you possess the biological capability to construct a new internal world as an adult. You short-circuit the loop by intentionally curating a new confidence ecosystem.
So what does that actually look like?
It means you aggressively seek out supportive communities, you set highly achievable goals, and you forcefully, consciously practice new self-talk until that new trail becomes a paved highway. It takes concerted effort, but humans rewrite their internal narratives at every single stage of life.
Okay, so now when people realize they need to boost their self-efficacy and project more confidence, society usually hands them what I consider to be the most toxic advice possible. Fake it till you make it.
Yes, the classic cliche.
We hear this constantly. Just pretend you're a fearless extrovert and eventually you'll become one. But the psychology we're looking at argues that this actively destroys genuine confidence. Let's really unpack the danger of wearing this mask.
The cliche, fake it till you make it, survives because it contains a microscopic sliver of truth. Sometimes altering your outward physical behavior can mildly influence your internal state, but the way it is broadly understood and applied creates a hollow, exhausting, and ultimately destructive performance.
A performance, right?
Fake confidence is entirely reliant on a mask. You force your voice to be artificially loud, you use exaggerated hand gestures, you paste on an enormous, unnatural smile. But internally, you are in agony.
You're freaking out.
You are terrified that someone is going to see through the disguise. Your cognitive load is completely hijacked by self-monitoring, constantly asking, am I convincing them? Do they know I'm an imposter?
It sounds like running a massive software update in the background of your computer.
I love that.
Faking confidence just eats up all your processing power. It leaves you so exhausted, so laggy, that you don't actually have the mental RAM left to listen to the person standing right in front of you.
That is a phenomenal analogy. And the biological cost is very real. It creates a massive contradiction that your nervous system has to manage. You are outwardly broadcasting, I am totally relaxed and in charge, while your internal reality is a stomach tied in knots and clenched jaw muscles.
And your body knows you're lying.
It does. Your nervous system is highly intelligent. It feels this profound contradiction, realizes you are effectively lying to the world, and interprets this as a state of extreme danger. It remains on high alert, pumping stress hormones into your bloodstream. You are pretending to be invincible, completely rejecting your normal human limitations. Authentic confidence, by contrast, has room for vulnerability. It allows you to admit that you are slightly out of your depth without feeling like that admission incinerates your self-worth.
I saw a perfect example of this in the case studies. Let's look at Alex.
Okay, Alex.
So, Alex is an advanced English learner living in New York, and he needs to attend this high-stakes professional networking event. He goes online and reads some absolute garbage advice telling him to stand like a CEO, dominate the conversation, and never show a hint of weakness.
The worst advice.
Terrible. So Alex walks into this event. He puts on this armor. He does a big, exaggerated swagger. He forces himself to laugh way too loudly at jokes he barely understands, and he slightly exaggerates his job responsibilities just to sound more important.
How's it go?
Well, the people he meets might be momentarily taken in, but internally, Alex feels completely detached from reality. He leaves the event feeling utterly depleted, highly anxious, and intensely paranoid that everyone secretly knew he was faking it.
And here is the true tragedy of Alex's night. That experience actually degrades his self-efficacy. Instead of building self-trust, he has reinforced a deeply toxic lesson. His brain has learned that being confident is synonymous with lying. It requires entirely suppressing his authentic self. If he continues down this path, he will inevitably start avoiding social or professional gatherings because the energetic cost of maintaining that fraudulent mask is simply too high to sustain.
So what happens when Alex gets tired of the mask and tries a different approach?
Let's run a different simulation. On his next attempt at networking, Alex decides to prioritize authenticity above performance. His internal dialogue shifts to, I'm going to stand upright, speak as clearly as I can, and be deeply honest. My goal tonight is to be genuinely curious about other people rather than trying to manipulate them into being impressed by me.
That's a huge mindset shift.
It is. He still employs positive physical behaviors, he maintains good posture and comfortable eye contact, but crucially, those outward behaviors are now perfectly aligned with his internal intention. He is seeking connection, not dominance.
So he's not driving a golf cart and pretending it's a sports car anymore. He's just being the best version of himself.
Spot on. He permits himself to be vulnerable. He might actually walk up to a group and say, to be completely honest, I always find speaking at these massive networking events a bit intimidating, but I was really fascinated by what you were just saying.
And people respond well to that.
They do. That level of honesty does not destroy his confidence. It fortifies it. People respond to authenticity. More importantly, his own body can finally relax because he is no longer fighting a war against his own emotional state. Authentic confidence means you aren't trying to erase your naturally introverted or extroverted personality. You are working in harmony with it.
So if we agree that fake it till you make it is terrible advice, how do we redefine that cliche into a mechanism that is actually psychologically sound?
A much more powerful and healthy interpretation is this. Act in accordance with your deeply held values, even before you feel fully emotionally ready, rather than pretending to possess abilities or an absolute lack of fear that you clearly do not have.
Give me an example of that.
Well, if one of your core values is courage, you might choose to raise your hand and speak up in a chaotic meeting, even while your hand is visibly trembling. That is not fake confidence. That is courage made manifest. You are honoring your values despite the presence of fear, and that is unquestionably the soil where true confidence takes root.
Act on your values, not on a fake persona. I love that. But if faking it doesn't work, what is the actual mechanical step-by-step process for generating growth? The research brings us back to those mastery experiences we touched on earlier, but it zooms in on a microscopic level. Let's look at the architecture of mastery, and specifically, the trap of vague goals.
Setting vague, grandiose goals is an absolute guarantee of failure.
Like what?
If your objective is, I will speak absolutely flawlessly in English for this entire 1-hour strategy meeting, your probability of success is essentially zero. Human communication is too unpredictable. When you inevitably stumble over a complex sentence structure, your brain registers it as a massive failure, which severely damages your self-efficacy. However, if you deconstruct that massive goal into tiny, hyper-achievable micro goals, the mathematics of success flip in your favor. And remember, the brain is a data collection machine. Every single success, no matter how microscopic, becomes undeniable empirical evidence that you can handle friction.
Let's follow the journey of May to see what this looks like in practice, because I think her story is incredible.
Oh, yes.
So May is a highly skilled software engineer living in Berlin. She has achieved a C1 level in English, but she entirely avoids the social dynamics of her office. Initially, her goal was just, I am going to be extremely confident in English at work.
Which is way too broad.
Exactly. That is so incredibly vague, it's functionally useless, and it acts as a massive psychological weight. She felt like a failure every single afternoon because she was comparing her messy reality to an impossible, abstract ideal. But then, May completely revamps her strategy. She breaks her vague desire down into actionable micro goals.
This is where it gets good.
Listen to how granular these are, listeners. Goal 1. Simply say good morning to at least one specific colleague in English before sitting at her desk. Goal 2. Ask one person, how was your weekend? On Monday morning. Goal 3. walk into the break room during the afternoon coffee block, and just remain in the room for 5 consecutive minutes.
From the outside, those actions might appear trivial to the point of being ridiculous. But neurologically, they are profound.
Really?
They are concrete, they are measurable, and they are entirely within her control. After 1 week of executing this, May conducts a review. She realizes she has successfully completed almost all of these micro goals. Her brain has just ingested a crucial new data set. She initiated social contact in English in a real-world environment multiple times, and she survived.
Right, she wasn't fired, she wasn't mocked.
The perceived danger was an illusion. This initiates a powerful snowball effect. The dopamine hit from achieving the small goal fuels the motivation to set a slightly larger one.
It's building momentum.
Yes. The next week, she decides to share one single opinion during a team stand-up. A month later, she volunteers to give a brief 3-minute update on her coding project.
She is literally building a new identity out of undeniable data points. She is no longer defining herself as someone who hides in the corner. But I have to push back a little on the mechanics of this.
Sure.
For an advanced learner like May, or the listener right now, who is likely quite sophisticated in their career, celebrating the fact that you managed to say good morning might feel patronizing. It feels a bit silly. How do you make that celebration feel like a genuine psychological tool rather than forced toxic positivity?
That is a very common hurdle, especially for high achievers. The secret is understanding the biological why behind the celebration. You're not throwing a parade because saying hello is a Herculean linguistic feat. You are celebrating to actively, forcefully override your brain's evolutionary negativity bias.
Negativity bias.
The human brain is functionally designed like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive ones. It is hardwired to obsess over threats and failures.
So it just ignores the good stuff.
Precisely. Undoubtedly. If you skip the conscious act of celebrating the micro goal, your brain will completely ignore the fact that you successfully socialized for 5 minutes, and it will obsessively fixate on the one plural noun you forgot to use.
So celebration isn't about ego, it is a required neurological intervention.
You've hit the nail on the head. You have to consciously log the progress to update your internal software. The celebration can be incredibly quiet. It might just be taking a deep breath at your desk and internally saying, I initiated that conversation. It wasn't Shakespeare, but I did it. That counts.
That's a great way to frame it.
The materials we're reviewing suggest a highly practical mechanism for this. The confidence journal. Every evening, you write down one specific instance where you step slightly outside your comfort zone. Today, I asked a clarifying question in the all-hands meeting. Today, I admitted I didn't catch a phrase and asked him to repeat it.
That sounds really doable.
Over a few weeks, this journal transitions from a simple notebook into a physical ledger of your resilience. It proves with empirical data that you can navigate discomfort. Small wins compound into self-efficacy, self-efficacy compounds into confidence, and confidence generates the courage to tackle larger challenges.
But here's the catch, right? You cannot celebrate those small wins if your inner voice is immediately attacking you the second you make a minor mistake. We have to figure out how to shut that voice up. Which brings us to the crucial process of rewiring the inner soundtrack. How do we transition from an inner critic to an inner coach?
The inner voice. It is the relentless 2047 soundtrack of your consciousness. For many advanced language learners, that inner critic operates like a merciless perfectionist.
It really does.
Consider what happens after a social event. You get in your car to drive home, and the critic immediately begins rewinding the tape, obsessively spotlighting every single awkward pause, every mispronounced syllable, every joke that didn't quite land.
Oh, I've done that so many times.
It whispers insidious things like, you made an absolute fool of yourself tonight. You should really just play it safe and stay quiet next time. Over years of repetition, this constant stream of criticism just becomes the background noise of your life. You stop even noticing that you are verbally abusing yourself. You simply walk around carrying a heavy, chronic sense of shame.
I read something from a therapist once that really struck me. They said that if you spoke to your actual physical friends the way your inner critic speaks to you, you wouldn't have a single friend left in the world. They would all abandon you because you'd be a monster. Why on earth do we tolerate this level of abuse from our own minds?
We tolerate it and often encourage it because we operate under the deeply flawed assumption that harsh, punitive criticism is the only effective engine for motivation.
Wait, really? We think being mean works.
Yes, We harbor this secret fear that if we cut ourselves even an ounce of slack, we will immediately become lazy, complacent, and lose our edge. But decades of psychological research prove the exact opposite is true.
What does the research say?
Chronic self-criticism triggers the body's threat defense system, increasing cortisol and actually impairing the cognitive functions required for learning. Self-compassion, conversely, lowers cortisol, builds emotional resilience, and encourages sustained effort after a failure.
That's fascinating.
The research highlights 3 non-negotiable elements of self-compassion. First is mindfulness, the ability to objectively observe your negative feelings without suppressing them or dramatically exaggerating them.
Okay, mindfulness.
Second is common humanity, the conscious recognition that struggling, making mistakes, and feeling foolish are universal human experiences, not evidence that you are uniquely defective. And third is self-kindness, actively treating yourself with the same warmth and patience you would offer a struggling friend.
Let's look at Hannah to see how this triad works in the real world. So Hannah lives in Paris, and she is taking intensive evening English classes for her career. She gets up to give a short 5-minute presentation to the class, and she feels it went disastrously. She lost her place, she stuttered, she completely forgot a key vocabulary word. Her old neurological habit would be to lie awake in bed until 3 a.m., playing a highlight reel of her worst moments on an endless loop, just drowning in shame.
The classic shame spiral.
Yes. But Hannah has been practicing self-compassion, so she decides to actively rewrite the script. She doesn't lie to herself. She doesn't look in the mirror and say, I am a flawless public speaker and everyone loved it. That would be delusional.
Right, that's just toxic positivity again.
Instead, she applies the 3 elements. She tells herself, okay, that was genuinely tough. I feel deeply embarrassed right now. That's mindfulness. But public speaking in a second language is terrifying for almost everyone on the planet. I am not the first person to freeze up. That's common humanity. I am proud of myself for volunteering to go first. Tomorrow I will practice the opening transition 3 more times so I feel more grounded. That's kindness and constructive action.
Notice the brilliance of what Hannah executed there. She did not invalidate her own embarrassment. She simply surrounded that embarrassment with a scaffolding of support and actionable strategy.
She didn't let it crush her.
Exactly. She functioned as an inner coach, analyzing the tape to improve performance, rather than an inner critic demanding a resignation. To apply this practically in your own life, you have to start by aggressively noticing your automatic thoughts immediately following a stressful situation. Catch the critic in the act.
That's the hard part.
Then ask yourself the golden question. Would I say this exact sentence to my best friend if they were in my shoes? If the answer is an immediate no, you must rewrite the thought. Finally, and this is crucial, practice speaking the new compassionate thought out loud.
I have to admit, it feels incredibly awkward, almost slightly unhinged, to talk nicely to yourself out loud in your kitchen.
It does feel strange at first. But I want you to consider how many thousands of hours you've subjected your brain to your own harsh, hypercritical voice. The neural pathways of self-hatred are incredibly thick.
That's a good point.
A few months of feeling slightly awkward while practicing a kinder voice aloud is a necessary mechanical course correction. It is the literal required work to build a mindset that possesses the resilience to put yourself out there in the world.
Now, we can't act like this is purely a mental exercise, right? The mind and the body are locked in this constant high-speed conversation. When you try to speak up in a meeting, your body reacts instantly. If you don't understand how to interpret and manage those physical signals, your newly trained inner coach is just going to get completely drowned out by a wave of physical panic. This brings us to the physicality of confidence.
Yes, the body is an active participant in every single moment of fear and courage. It is not just a meat vehicle for your brain.
Meat vehicle, I like that.
Milliseconds before you attempt to speak in a high-stakes second language environment, your autonomic nervous system kicks in, your heart rate spikes, your respiratory rate increases, your digestion slows down. As we discussed with Sarah earlier, the default societal response is to misinterpret these biological signals as social anxiety, panic, or proof of weakness.
But we're redefining that, right?
Yes, we must radically redefine our relationship with nervousness. Your body is not panicking. Your body is activating. It is flooding your bloodstream with adrenaline and oxygen to sharpen your focus and provide the energetic resources necessary to engage with the challenge.
If you slap a label of panic on that feeling, your biological instinct is to flee the room. But if you label it activation energy, your instinct is to utilize it. The research also dives deeply into the science of posture and safety, which is just fascinating to me. Standing or sitting with an open posture isn't just about looking good to other people. It actually influences your own internal emotional state.
It absolutely does.
And to be clear, we aren't talking about striking some ridiculous, dramatic superhero pose in the middle of a coffee shop. It's much more subtle.
Yeah.
It's about lifting your sternum, allowing your shoulders to drop away from your ears, and planting your feet squarely on the floor.
Those specific physical alignments are incredibly potent. They send direct neurological signals of stability up the vagus nerve to the brain.
The vagus nerve.
Yes. Imagine you are sitting at a cafe with a senior colleague trying to articulate a complex idea in English. If you physically curl into a defensive ball, cross your arms tightly over your chest, and stare down at your coffee cup, your brain reads your own proprioceptive cues and concludes, we are under attack. We are in a state of submissive danger.
Oh, wow. So your body tells your brain you're in trouble.
Accurately stated. Consequently, your breathing becomes shallow and your voice becomes thin and reedy. But if you intentionally sit upright, plant both feet to feel the ground, and maintain gentle, relaxed eye contact, your body transmits a completely different message to the brain.
Right.
I am safe, I am grounded, I am an active, equal participant in this dynamic.
And that changes how you sound.
Absolutely. Your diaphragm has room to expand, and your voice naturally resonates with more authority. This is the profound concept of embodiment. Intentionally adopting physical behaviors that support your physiological regulation, allowing your authentic self to emerge.
Wait, let me circle back because I want to make sure I'm drawing the right distinction here. We talked extensively about Alex earlier and how his attempt at faking it with a big, aggressive CEO swagger was psychologically harmful. Is intentionally sitting up straight and taking deep breaths just a more sophisticated form of faking it? How is this fundamentally different from what Alex was doing?
That is the essential distinction to master, right there. The difference lies entirely in intention and alignment. Alex was utilizing exaggerated posture as a mechanism of deception. He was trying to hide his terror and project a fraudulent identity of invincibility. It was an armor designed to keep people out.
Okay, I see.
Embodiment, conversely, is a tool for internal regulation, not external deception. When you consciously sit up straight and take a slow, diaphragmatic breath, you are not trying to con the room to believing you are a fearless titan of industry. You are simply providing your own nervous system with the biological support it requires to process the rush of activation energy.
You're helping yourself, not tricking them. Spot on. You are tuning your body's antenna so it can receive and transmit clearly. You are regulating your physiology so your true intellect can be heard. It is an act of profound presence, not a theatrical performance.
That distinction changes everything. It's about authentically occupying space. Think about it. If you constantly speak in a tiny apologetic whisper and you physically shrink into your chair, you are broadcasting a physical signal that you do not believe you have the right to be there. You are asking for permission to exist.
Yes.
But if you speak at a normal volume and hold your physical space, you are signaling that your presence is legitimate. You belong in the conversation.
Unquestionably.
Yeah.
You are assuming your inherent right to take up space in the world. Simple physiological practices like inhaling through your nose for 4 seconds and exhaling slowly through your mouth for 6 seconds, right before you unmute your microphone on a Zoom call. Force the nervous system out of the sympathetic fight or flight state and into the parasympathetic rest and digest state.
And that unlocks the brain. It literally does. When your brain registers that safety, it unlocks access to the higher cognitive functions of the prefrontal cortex, making it drastically easier to retrieve complex vocabulary and grammatical structures. Your body is not a rebellious enemy you have to conquer. It is an incredibly sophisticated machine trying to protect you. You just have to learn how to drive it.
Let's bring all of these psychological frameworks and physiological tools onto the ultimate battlefield for our listeners. Advanced language learning. This is where it gets incredibly deep and, frankly, quite emotional.
This is a very emotional journey.
There is this pervasive, painful phenomenon that many advanced learners experience, which I call the two selves dilemma. It is the grief of a fractured identity. In your native language, you are a master of your domain. You are witty, you grasp subtle sarcasm, you can debate complex philosophy. You are fast on your feet. But the second you switch to English, you feel like a downgraded version of yourself. You feel slower, your jokes don't land, and you worry that people think you are less intelligent than you actually are. It's like being a master violinist, but being forced to play on an instrument missing half its strings. The music in your head is a symphony, but what comes out sounds like a beginner.
It is a deeply agonizing contrast, and it is the source of immense frustration. You possess immense cognitive complexity, but linguistic and emotional barriers constantly disrupt your ability to broadcast that complexity.
He's so unfair.
It feels that way. And this specific pain point leads directly into the most dangerous trap for the advanced learner, the comparison game. You instinctively compare your spontaneous second language output at the flawless output of native speakers who have been completely immersed in the phonetic nuances of English since the day they were born. You compare your natural accent to the meticulously coached speech of actors on television. You compare your casual email drafting to polished academic journals.
It's the ultimate unfair metric. It's like comparing the messy, chaotic, handwritten first draft of your novel to someone else's polished, edited, New York Times best-selling final publication. It makes absolutely no sense.
It is a mathematically unwinnable game designed to systematically destroy your self-efficacy.
So what's the alternative?
The only psychologically sound, intellectually honest comparison you can make is to your own historical baseline. You must ask yourself, what was the exact state of my English proficiency 12 months ago? Could I have effortlessly followed the complex arguments in this deep dive a year ago? Could I have navigated that tense client negotiation 6 months ago?
Looking backwards, not sideways.
Exactly. If you can identify measurable progress across your own timeline, your confidence has a foundation of concrete truth to rest upon.
The research we are looking at actually outlines 5 highly practical, tactical strategies specifically engineered for advanced learners to manage this two-selves dilemma. Let's really break these down. Strategy number 1, normalize mistakes publicly.
A powerful one.
This means making a conscious, premeditated decision that when you inevitably make a mistake, you will casually correct yourself out loud without a hint of shame. For example, you are telling a story and you say, yesterday went to the store. You treat it with the same emotional weight as adjusting your glasses. It is just ordinary.
That behavior is a massive signal of authority. It communicates to your own brain and to the people listening that minor grammatical errors are simply a natural byproduct of complex communication, not an indictment of your intelligence.
Strategy number 2 involves the intentional use of repair phrases. These are linguistic tools designed to manage the flow of communication when you hit a mental roadblock.
Like what?
Memorizing phrases like, let me rewind and phrase that differently, or I have a specific concept in mind, just give me a second to find the right English equivalent. Utilizing these phrases demonstrates immense situational command. Genuine confidence is never defined as perfect, unbroken fluency. It is defined by the calm, methodical handling of friction as it arises.
That is so practical.
Right. Okay, strategy number 3. Focus obsessively on communication over performance. Prioritize clarity above all else. If your primary objective is simply to ensure the other person understands your core point, you can liberate yourself to use simpler, more direct sentence structures without feeling a shred of shame that you didn't use a $50 vocabulary word.
Spot on.
Strategy number 4. Practice micro-speaking reps. This involves speaking aloud in English for just 1 to 2 minutes every single day, completely alone. You can narrate what you were cooking for dinner or explain a complex work problem to an empty room. It builds the mechanical habit of using your English voice and accessing your vocabulary without the paralyzing pressure of an audience evaluating you.
And finally, strategy number 5 is curating and building supportive communities. You must actively surround yourself with individuals who respect the immense cognitive effort required to operate in a second language.
Yes, filter your network.
If you encounter someone who mocks your accent or rudely interrupts your process, you must reframe that interaction immediately. Their behavior is a glaring reflection of their own immaturity, insecurity, and poor social skills. It is absolutely not a reflection of your intellect or your worth.
Let's look at Luis from Madrid to see how these strategies synergize in a high-pressure environment.
Okay, Luis.
Luis works in international finance. His written English is spectacular. He can write brilliant financial reports. But put him on a live multinational conference call, and he completely freezes up. The speed of the conversation just overwhelms him.
The two selves striking again.
Exactly. So Luis decides to engineer a strategy. 10 minutes before the call, he physically writes down his 3 primary data points on a Post-it note, along with one specific repair phrase like, let me clarify that point. When the call starts, he stands up at his desk to allow his diaphragm to open and get that activation energy flowing.
He's using embodiment.
Yes. During the call, his singular metric for success is effectively communicating those 3 points. He entirely abandons a goal of sounding like a native-born Wall Street banker, and afterward he takes 2 minutes to reflect in his journal, noting one thing he communicated perfectly and one transition he wants to smooth out next time.
And what's the result?
Over the course of a year, his nervous system adapts. He still feels the adrenaline spike before dialing in, but he implicitly trusts his ability to manage the call. He has successfully constructed domain-specific confidence.
Louis took absolute ownership of his methodology there. He didn't wait for confidence to strike him like lightning. He built it brick by brick, which transitions us seamlessly into the final, most complex layer of this journey.
Which is?
Executing these strategies requires interacting with unpredictable human beings. That means you have to navigate complex social dynamics, manage power imbalances, and fiercely protect your fundamental right to speak and be heard.
That brings us to the crucial topic of setting the boundaries of social confidence. And I think we need to aggressively dispel a major cultural myth right away. Western society, in particular, aggressively pushes the narrative that social confidence equals being the loudest, most dominant, most relentlessly extroverted person in the room.
That is a fundamental misunderstanding of what social confidence actually is. Introverts can, and often do, possess profound, unshakable social confidence. They simply manifest it through a different operating system.
I love that. A different operating system.
An introvert with high social confidence might listen with intense focus, speak far less frequently but with devastating impact when they do, and vastly prefer deep one-on-one negotiations over commanding a room of 50 people. Authentic social confidence is about deeply respecting your own natural social cadence while ensuring you communicate your boundaries honestly.
And a massive non-negotiable pillar of this is learning how to set boundaries in a second language.
It is
Boundaries in a second language. That is terrifying for a lot of people. This means explicitly defining what behaviors you will and will not accept from other people. If a colleague is constantly talking over you in meetings because it takes you a half second longer to formulate your sentence in English, social confidence is possessing the ability to hold up a hand and say, "Please give me a moment, I would like to finish my thought."
That is a perfect example. It isn't about being aggressive or starting a conflict. It is about valuing the importance of your own perspective enough to claim and protect the oxygen it needs to exist.
Let's talk about Ariana to illustrate the dark side of lacking boundaries. So Ariana lives in Los Angeles and works in a highly competitive marketing agency.
Okay.
She is a very advanced English speaker, but she possesses a deep pathological hatred of conflict. She is a chronic people pleaser. So when aggressive colleagues unfairly criticize her campaign ideas or when someone makes a slightly inappropriate, uncomfortable joke, Ariana's default defense mechanism is to just laugh it off.
Oh, that's exhausting.
She stays completely silent when she actually vehemently disagrees with the strategy, purely because she is terrified of being labeled as the difficult foreigner. As a result, she feels entirely invisible in her own career. She goes home feeling burning resentment toward her team and intense shame toward herself. She assumes she is just a fundamentally weak, unconfident person.
But Ariana's core issue is not a lack of vocal volume or a lack of vocabulary. Her crisis is an absolute lack of boundaries. She is betraying her own values to maintain a false peace.
So how does she fix it?
She can begin building her social confidence, not by picking massive fights, but by utilizing small, exceptionally firm boundary statements. She can deploy phrases like, "Actually, I view the data differently," or "I need more time to process these numbers before I give you a final answer," or even simply, "I'm not comfortable with that line of joking."
Those are pretty straightforward.
Exactly. These are structurally simple English sentences, but they carry immense psychological and social weight. Every time she deploys one, she sends a clear signal to the room. I am a distinct entity. My perspective holds weight. And simultaneously, she reinforces her own internal self-efficacy.
But I have to push back here on behalf of the listener because setting boundaries with your boss or colleagues is incredibly stressful, even in your native language, where you possess total mastery of tone. Attempting to do it in a second language sounds like walking a tightrope without a net.
It is intimidating, yes.
You might lack the subtle cultural nuances required to sound polite but firm. How does someone actually start doing this without coming off as incredibly rude and alienating the people they work with?
That fear of accidental alienation is deeply valid and very common.
Yeah.
The strategic solution is to start small and anchor your boundaries in pure authenticity, which thankfully does not require complex diplomatic vocabulary. Authenticity simply means allowing people to witness your real preferences and your real limitations. If you nod and pretend to agree with a disastrous strategy just to fit in, you are delivering a performance, not building a connection. You can express a firm boundary or a dissenting opinion accompanied by a kind smile, a calm, regulated tone of voice, and remarkably simple vocabulary.
Like what?
Like, I prefer we approach the client this way. You do not need to master a perfectly constructed, culturally nuanced four-part idiom to be authentic. In fact, sometimes a thoughtful, prolonged silence accompanied by steady eye contact is the most powerful and polite boundary you can set.
Silence can be very loud.
Unquestionably. When you are crystal clear on your core values, whether that is honesty, thoroughness, or mutual respect, you can choose behaviors that align with those values, even if your grammar isn't flawless. That alignment is what builds deep, identity-based confidence that nobody can take away from you.
It's about consistently showing up for yourself, refusing to abandon yourself in moments of friction. We have covered a massive amount of psychological terrain today. We've unpacked the nuances of the growth mindset, the biological reality of the physical body, the specific tactical language strategies, and the necessity of social boundaries.
We really have covered a lot.
Now it is time to assemble all these disparate pieces into a cohesive, personalized confidence system. How does the listener take all this theory and build an engine they can literally turn on and use tomorrow morning?
The materials provide a highly practical, sequential 7-step system to build this exact engine. It is designed so that it doesn't need to be overwhelmingly complicated. It just requires relentless consistency.
Let's break down the 7 steps.
Step 1 is clarity. You must take a piece of paper and explicitly define what real, authentic confidence actually looks like for you, specifically. You have to write it down to make it real. For example, your definition might be, real confidence means I trust that my value as an employee does not depend on having a perfect American accent.
I love that. Step 2 is micro goals. You have to take that abstract clarity and schedule tiny, concrete actions. Decide that you will ask exactly one question in tomorrow's meeting. Decide you will start one casual conversation in the elevator. You put these micro goals in your calendar and treat them with the same non-negotiable respect you would give a specialist doctor's appointment.
Step 3 is reflection. You must actively track your successes to forcefully train your brain away from its evolutionary negativity bias. Whether it's a journal or an app on your phone, you must spend 2 minutes every evening logging what went well, proving to yourself that you are capable of growth.
Okay, what's next?
Step 4 is inner voice training. When that harsh perfectionist critic inevitably pipes up after a mistake, you must consciously pause, take a breath, and actively rewrite the script into compassionate, constructive self-talk.
Step 5 is body regulation. You need to create a reliable, pre-challenge physical routine. 3 minutes before that massive Zoom presentation, you do your specific breathing exercises. You intentionally roll your shoulders back. You plant your feet. You send deliberate biological signals of safety to your nervous system so your brain can actually access the English vocabulary you've spent years studying.
Step 6 is curating a supportive environment. You must ruthlessly audit the media you consume and the individuals you spend your energy on. Unfollow the social media accounts that make you feel like your progress is inadequate. Distance yourself from colleagues who mock effort. Surround yourself with voices, podcasts, and friends who celebrate resilience.
And the final step.
Finally, step 7, values alignment. Identify the core values that matter most to you. Perhaps it is courage, curiosity, or kindness, and commit to taking one single action every day that manifests that value, regardless of how much fear you feel in the moment.
I want you to imagine applying this exact 7-step system over the next 3 months. Let's say your primary value is courage. Your daily micro goal is speaking English aloud for just 2 minutes. Every night, you reflect on your tiny wins. Every morning, you regulate your breathing before opening your laptop. If you do this consistently for 3 months, will you still feel a spike of nervousness before a massive quarterly presentation?
Yes, absolutely.
But your baseline reality will have fundamentally, permanently shifted. Your nervous system will be measurably calmer. You will possess a physical journal filled with undeniable empirical proof of your own wins. That is the steady, unglamorous, but incredibly real evolution of authentic confidence.
It's not about experiencing a sudden cinematic transformation where you wake up one Tuesday morning completely devoid of fear. It's about fundamentally raising the floor of your capabilities. You will undoubtedly still have low days where you stumble, but your new baseline, your new floor will be exponentially higher than it used to be.
That is such a powerful synthesis. Confidence is not a shiny, magical object you stumble across and put on a shelf.
Yeah.
It is a living, breathing, ongoing relationship with yourself.
A relationship. Exactly. I mean, spot on.
It requires brutal honesty about your current limitations, relentless effort to expand them, and above all, immense, unwavering kindness when you inevitably fall short. You are allowed to be nervous, and you are allowed to speak anyway. You are allowed to make glaring mistakes, and you are allowed to still see yourself as entirely worthy of respect.
We have spent this time thoroughly dismantling the toxic myth of the fearless speaker, and hopefully we have replaced it with a framework for something infinitely more resilient. The courageous, authentic speaker.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the person listening, with a final provocative challenge. Think about everything we've dissected today. Think about May's micro goals, Hannah's inner coach, the power of taking a deep breath to regulate your vagus nerve, and the necessity of claiming your space in a room. What is one small, specific action you will take today, not next week, not when you feel ready, but today, that your future, more confident self will look back on and be deeply proud of? Let that single, courageous action be the very next step in building the quiet, steady, real confidence you absolutely deserve. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel.